So that's how to use the horizontal vertical logic template for developing the agenda logic. The second step is, of course, then to use the standard script template, which you see here. This is the 5 Ys, and that's because there's a W involved in all of these questions. Here we select the time, both the start time and how long things take, what's the topic or what's the part of the agenda that we deal with, why do we do it, that we're doing it, who's going to do it, and what tasks and tools, materials that we're going to use in order to deliver this part of the agenda. And then we have the last one, which is the more advanced session leader tools that we then cover in the super user course, and that's usually for larger, higher stakes sessions. That's what that's made for. All right, so let's look at the script templates that we have here. Here we have an example of how a script can be detailed. Here you can see the time starts, how long it takes. This first step is typically always there for the start of a meeting or workshop. There's a preparation time for the actuals before the session starts. Here at 8:30, we set up the room. The purpose is to get everything ready. There's someone responsible for that, and there's a few things that needs to be done in order for the room to be ready for the session. 9 o'clock, people have arrived, they've been ready, and this is where we kick off with a welcome and introduction. The purpose of that, the specific activities that's going to happen, and here it also says what type of activities in Think Tank are going to be used for the different elements. So this is just an example of it. In order for you to have a context about what this is all about, I have written out the purpose, output, and resources for the meeting or for this session. This is a full day session for a project group to bring a project that has been not doing well, to bring it back on track. And this is there's been a day set aside for this meeting. With the use of Think Tank, we typically can reduce the time from a full day to, in this case, just about a half a day's work. So that's what a script looks like when you fill it out. This is an example for your reference. Now, what then makes the difference between Think Tank and Think Tank enabled sessions and other sessions? Well, first of all, when we use Think Tank, we have a much higher or larger scope of actions available to us. So we can create larger numbers of contributions and inputs, which of course we need to plan out for how do we handle those during the session. And at the same time, we can get much more done in the same time, so the group can produce and do more. Secondly, we increase the speed of action. When you use crowdsourcing techniques in a session, you actually produce a large scope of input quickly, and each activity does not take as long as expected. Third, we can increase the quality of contributions, and the quality can come in more profound insights that's also documented, so we don't lose the insights later by transcribing them or by asking someone to remember them and then just write down what we remember. Secondly, we can also get a lot of redundant, unstructured, irrelevant contributions. So the organization and reduction collaboration activities are much needed when you have larger pools of contributions that you need to sort through and organize and arrange so you can actually use them for something constructive. Last but not least, Think Tank create a much higher level of engagement. So it creates motivation and willingness to participate, which means that you have to allow for times of interaction. So this is some of the key values that Think Tank brings, and these are some of the things that you need to consider once you develop your agenda. As the number of contributions increase, we've put into this video just a few insights about how to handle these contributions. First of all, we need to estimate them. So if you plan a session, you need to probably guess ahead of time how many contributions you'll have. So in this situation, let's say you have 25 people involved in a session. You ask an open, broad question, and then let's say you will have about 7 contributions per thinker. That means 7 times 25. So you have about 175 contributions. Then these ones you then need to handle in the session. And then how do you do that? How do you handle such a big amount? Well, there are different facilitation and collaboration techniques in order to handle these ones. Some of the normal things we do is to group similar input together in groups and then indent them. We can ask the group to delete identical inputs. We can do theming of the input, so we group them together in themes that are the same, and in that way reducing a higher number of contributions into a lower set of themes. So there's a number of ways for how to reduce the contributions to the more important ones. So, but these type of activities you need to, of course, consider as part of the think tank enabled collaboration session. Another little tip before we move on to the exercise is, of course, to consider the energy of a session. Now, there are certain users of think tank or certain facilitators that tend to run the same activity a number of times during a session. Normally, after a while, that takes energy out of the session. So we normally recommend a series of things in order to make sure that the energy level is being kept reasonably high throughout the session. First of all, to mix and sequence different activities is normally a good trick. This can be the presentation activities, crowdsourcing and assessment activities, which basically accounts for 90% of the use of think tank. It can be having breaks after completing intensive activities. It can actually have to do with creating an ambiance with music or other things in the room. It can be, and this is a very popular one, blending heads up and heads down activities. Heads up activities are typically where you talk together and discuss on an open floor discussion, and heads down is where you actually input text, for instance, in think tank. So basically what we're saying here, you do not need to use think tank for all activities because a mix of different facilitation techniques create a better and higher energy. Use think tank for what it's best for, but also remember that there are the things that makes a successful think tank a session besides the use of think tank for every single thing you do during a collaboration session. So, few tips for energy. Now it's time for the exercise. We've talked a lot about how to make the objectives and strategy for a session and how to develop a collaborative agenda. Now it's your turn. So the first thing you need to do is, of course, to consider what type of session can you use for this exercise. And we strongly recommend that you choose a session that is coming up within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and that is a session where you think think tank could be successfully deployed or used to, better the session or to create better outcomes. If you do that, that can also act as your certification project, because after the training is done, the last module deals with how to get certified, and certification is basically based on you planning and executing a session. So if you choose the exercise now wisely, you can actually choose to work on this one during the training. And then when the training is done, you basically just execute it, you send in the documentation, and then you get certified. You are, of course, free to choose whatever you want for this exercise, but we recommend that it's going to be an actual session that you can organize and run that happens within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and where you see a value of using think tank. Content of the exercise is to complete 3 steps. I'll outline them in a minute. Then once you've completed the exercise, you submit the exercise document to your instructor, and you will then receive some feedback based on the quality and the nature of your agenda. So let's look at what 3 steps you're going to make. First of all, you have to define the objectives and strategy for a session. It can look something like this. Here you see the session identification in the top. You see the purpose description, a deliverable description, and a resource description. Once you've done that, the next step is for you to outline the horizontal and vertical logic. You can do this in a PowerPoint like this, or you can use the template provided in ThinkTank for it. And then third step is to develop a script for your agenda and detail it, so exactly what's going to happen when and where. And once you've done this, you are done with the exercise. So the next steps would be that you complete the exercise, forward the documents to the instructor. You will then receive and review comments by the instructor about your session, so you can potentially update it and improve it. And then once you got that feedback and updated it, then it's time for you to watch and go to the next step of the training program, which is the Designing a Think Tank Session video.